In The Myth of the Machine, historian Lewis Mumford warned that computers would suck away our freedom and destroy life-enhancing values. But by the 1970s, computers were embraced as symbols of individual expression and liberation. This was certified when Timothy Leary declared personal computers had become the new LSD and adopted the mantra, turn on, boot up, jack in. Personal computers were thought to be the true royal road to the future. It could be said that this sentiment lasted well into the 2000s. At the beginning of the 2010s, technology meant promise. With the internet, we had access to an infinite amount of information that could spread to every corner of the earth. Social media was fueling the Arab Spring, Google was testing self-driving cars, Apple introduced artificial intelligence with Siri, Instagram exploded into the scene, spawning multiple subcultures, and everyone now had access to the revolutionary iPhone, the world's first advanced touchscreen smartphone. However, in 2010, we weren't aware that the iPhone would alter the very fabric of society. Actually, we had no idea what was to come. 2 years later, in 2012, an iPhone app was created that made the swipe right a cultural phenomenon. You guessed it, Tinder. This was the first time in history people essentially had a singles catalog in their pocket. It radically changed the way we met people. By 2014, Tinder was registering about 1 billion swipes per day and matching more than 12 million people. Tinder expanded the reach of our social networks, facilitating interactions between people who might not have crossed paths otherwise. With so many people making connections like this, there became a cross-pollination of social circles that didn't exist previously. With something spreading like wildfire through an area of our lives so important and so personal, how did people feel about it? Since I'm a part of the generation that helped fuel this dating app culture, the Millennials, I wanted to talk to a few of my good friends to find out.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm 36 years old. I'm from Venezuela, from Valencia.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm 30 years old and I'm from Montreal, Canada.
Hey, I'm Talina, 32 years old, and I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, but now I live in Whistler, BC.
Hey, I'm Sarah. I am 29 years old and currently live in New York City.
My name is Ashley Halick, and I'm 34 years old. I was born and raised in the Midwest, but I currently reside in Jalisco, Mexico.
Hi, I'm Paulina. I'm 31 years old and I'm from Guadalajara, Mexico.
Well, I started using dating apps in 2015, actually, after I broke up with my boyfriend.
And where were you?
I was in Zurich, in Switzerland. Well, at the beginning, I think I wasn't that ready for dating, but I remember I loved it. I mean, I was, with this breakup thing, and I remember it gave me like a boost of confidence.
It's such an ego booster at the end of the day. Like, it's so much fun being on Tinder, for instance, and knowing that every time you swipe, like every 5 person that you'll swipe right, you have 2 that it's a match. Like, that's a big ego booster. It's 40% of the population that likes you back.
So in the first week of downloading this app, it was just like the hotline bling bling. It was like bing, 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 bing. Tinder notifications were blowing up my phone. And I was excited. I was happy. Better than that was this constant hit of endorphins. And they say endorphins make people happy. So it was very happy.
I kept hearing the same phrase from all of my friends. It gave them confidence and a stream of endorphins to boot. This was a good thing, right? What was the harm in getting an ego boost? Well, it turns out a lot. Let me explain. The interface of a dating app is designed to trigger the same neurobiological mechanisms as a slot machine. With every right swipe, there's a moment of anticipation as we wait to find out if it's a match. When it is, there's an on-screen celebration giving us the feeling that we've won. This element of surprise creates a rush of dopamine that quickly fades, leaving us wanting more. Perhaps that's why users message back and forth with fewer than 10% of their matches. Like a casino, a swiping app isn't designed to help us win. It's designed to keep us playing so the house wins. In fact, Tinder boasts that users log in on average 11 times per day, spending up to 90 minutes per day swiping, and have accumulated on average over 200 matches. However, for the vast majority of users, this has led to exactly 0 relationships. According to a Pew Research Center report on online dating in 2020, 30% of U.S. adults have used a dating app or website, but only 12% found a committed relationship or marriage. And it's no surprise after you hear Tinder's CEO in a Time interview say, "It doesn't even matter if you match because swiping is so fun." But is it? I wanted to find out what kind of impact the swiping phenomenon had on my generation. How did we feel about it? And how was it changing our dating culture?
The problem with the apps is it's like a lottery. I mean, the more you play, the more you increase your chances, but there's no guarantee, no? It depends what you're looking for. And I think you shouldn't be looking for something for anything. I mean, your expectations have to be very low because there's everything. I mean, like I dated maybe 4 years. Many of the people that were on the apps, they didn't know what they wanted exactly. I think it's hard to be clear about what you want with someone that you just met. So you're vulnerable for this person to maybe just be having fun. I dated this other guy and he totally broke my heart. I mean, I remember it didn't feel any good. You never know the intentions of the other person because it's too easy to get into the apps, you know? Tinder is like fast food somehow, you know, like.
Remember when I said Tinder had expanded the reach of our social networks, allowing people to meet who might not have met otherwise? Well, that could be a pro and a con. You see, back in the day when meeting your dates through friends and family was the norm, daters had an incentive to be honest, upfront, and nice to each other because you had mutual connections. Now we lost that third-party connection, resulting in ghosting, orbiting, breadcrumbing, and benching each other. Furthermore, in one study, I found that 48% of online daters said they were only looking for fun, and 13% said they were simply looking for sex. It's no wonder so many people began suffering from dating app burnout. How could you possibly know if someone was seriously looking for a relationship? There was no incentive to be honest or upfront, and like Vanessa mentioned, it was way too easy to get into the apps. Aside from this dilemma, I found something else going on in the world of Tinder, and it didn't involve looking for love or relationships at all.
We would play the Tinder game, and the Tinder game was just made up. And everyone is on Tinder. You put your phone in the middle of the table and you say 3, 2, 1 and you grab someone else's phone, right? So then you're now swiping and acting as if you're the owner of the phone. We were out at some crappy club and some guy comes up to me and he's like, "Talina," and I was like, "Yeah, who are you?" He's like, "We matched." I'm like, "I don't think so." And then my friends are like cracking up laughing because we know what's going on, right? We just played the Tinder game. He's like, "Yeah, we were talking." I was like, "Yeah, nah, I don't think we were."
And it wasn't only my generation that joined in on the game. Do you remember Dawn from the last episode? Even the baby boomers were joining in on the fun.
Probably the funniest thing that has happened was I knew nothing about Tinder and I was in LA helping a friend with her business. She had an event venue, but she was also a high fashion photographer. And one evening she wanted me to go out with them at the end of a shoot to kind of be the entertainer because I was fun. And she wanted to be rehired by this campaign again. So she asked me to come. And I remember I let those men that she had worked for, it was Hugo Boss shoot. So they're all in from Germany and they're all wanting to do something fun. And so I allowed them to make me a Tinder account live at the table. And then I let them go as far as to find a date for me that night in the restaurant that we were in. And they had the waiter go find him and everything. And then I was like, no, I'm not really meeting him. But that was fun while we were, that took probably 2 or 3 hours sitting at a table, drinking wine, having a great time, everybody laughing. So the next thing we did was go out to a disco. And I never opened up that Tinder account ever again until the same girlfriend and I had gone to Italy, and we're the most boring people at night. We just sit in our rooms. And so at night we would sit in our rooms and play the Tinder games, what we called it, with Italian guys, just people we were never going to meet.
It was clear that Tinder had gamified our dating culture, and people seemed to be enjoying playing for now. But I wanted to get an expert's opinion on the matter.
Hello, this is Leslie Wardman, and I am the founder of Ambiance Matchmaking.
I asked Leslie, what did she think about this gamification of Tinder, and what would the long-term effects be?
People's perception is a funny thing. So if you do view it like it's a video game or something and, swipe, no, dodge this one, dodge that one, like asteroids or something, and all of a sudden the right guy pops up 10 years later.
But gaming aside, Leslie says that there was another even bigger issue at stake.
Once upon a time, like you met somebody and before online dating, if there was some significant platform of something to build on that was halfway substantial, you worked on it. If there was a problem, you came back to the table and you put effort into it because you realize that, significant others don't grow on trees. Well, these days, significant others kind of do, digitally. It's totally extracted anybody taking effort out of a relationship. But then again, you can't just hold online dating responsible for all this. Everybody has a mom and a dad, hopefully, and, seeing how they play through their, situations is going to have a big impact on you, more so than online dating.
I asked a lot of my friends what their thoughts were on this culture of swapping out your significant other when problems popped up. And they admitted either they had personally done this or they knew friends who were doing it on a continual basis.
Honestly, I find that dating apps has changed so much the dating world because, for instance, how many friends now I have more friends, or I had more friends that were single, and their reaction is, for example, like if for instance, like I have an argument with Rodrigo, my first reaction will not be, well, you can go back on a dating app and find someone else. Like, of course not. But a lot of my friends, like when they're starting dating, instead of figuring it out and like sorting out your argument, people are just going to be like, yeah, next. Yeah, I find that like relationships are so important. And it's as though people now are not valuing those relationships. I don't know. I think that there's like pros and cons to dating apps, that it's changing people's mentalities and way of doing.
This phenomenon is so strong in our dating culture, we did our very first podcast episode on the topic, titled The Paradox of Choice. For those that remember, my guest Denver was talking about this very thing.
And a lot of people have this issue, and I've like checked myself a few times, but this illusion of choice. Oh, no, there's one thing about this person that doesn't really kind of work. Oh, no, I could definitely find the perfect girl, which doesn't actually exist. And the other thing that I found like these days is like people don't work at stuff that much,
right?
Which is another massive shame because you're just kind of missing out. It's just like constant merry-go-round that people. Maybe there should be a dating app called Merry-Go-Round.
This was obviously an issue, but on the flip side, just like personal computers had brought creative expression and liberation to people in the 70s, dating apps brought liberation to the dating sphere in the 2010s. Singles could break out of their narrow social circles, allowing them to meet people from other places and cultures and be exposed to a variety of men and women before settling down. It even helped to integrate the country. Interracial marriage had two major spikes over the last 20 years, once right after Match.com launched in 95, and again in 2014, 2 years after Tinder made its debut. And for those online daters that learn to jump off the merry-go-round, well, it turns out they may have longer, happier marriages. Researchers from the University of Chicago conducted a study of 19,000 participants and found that the rate of marital breakups for those who met their spouse online was 25% lower than for those who met offline. The researchers suggested that a greater pool of potential spouses might give users more options and allow them to be more selective.
The man that I'm with now, we had actually matched on 3 separate dating apps, and it was actually Tinder where we actually started communicating, and we ended up meeting in person, and 5 years later here we are.
And dating apps weren't the only way of connecting people. Social media also played a role. Facebook, for example, was reconnecting long-lost loves and making it easier to find the one that got away.
So I met my husband when I was 14 years old. We were both tennis players and we were from different cities. So we saw each other in a tournament and kind of just made contact. I was a kid and he already has 17, 18 years old, so I was just dreaming to get to know him. But then more than 10 years after that, we find each other again on Facebook. We start liking pictures of each other, following the lifestyle of each other, the thoughts, the interests. And it was just like that for about 2 years. I had a boyfriend, I broke up, and I believe he saw all of that in my profile. I remember telling my mom something like, I could just marry this guy tomorrow. And funny, a few weeks later, he finally made contact through a Facebook message. And we were living in different cities, so we planned to see each other in Mexico City for a weekend. It was just pure attraction. We spent the whole weekend together, having lunch, dinner, walking in the city, and talking. And next weekend, he flew to my hometown, met my parents, and stayed for weeks. And then I flew over to his place, and we were already talking about living together and kind of planning how it was going to work for us. A month and a half later from that Mexico City weekend, we took a trip together to the beach, and he proposed to me in the airport. And I just felt that was the way it's supposed to be. I never hesitated or had second thoughts, even thought everybody was thinking, oh, this is way too quick, But I guess I was in love with him since I was a 14-year-old girl, and life just made us wait around 12 years to be together. And yeah, we've been married since then for 5 years now with my husband.
Honestly, I was happy to find this glimpse of good news, but for every sliver of hope I got about online dating, it was always eclipsed by something bigger and darker.
I first got Tinder in 2014, and I just remember all of the swiping, pretty average and then really beautiful guys. I feel like there was some kind of algorithm that would kind of assess your attractiveness and then try to find guys within that range, because I remember I would swipe through some of my friends' accounts and they would have a totally different pick of guys, and it was such an interesting kind of experience to be on it. I just felt like most of the conversations went kind of straight to, hey, want to grab a drink? And then kind of this hookup mentality. So I didn't really get into that. But I wanted to tell you, I had a really bizarre experience actually on Tinder once. I matched with this guy, and it was so bizarre because I got to the bar. We went to this little place in Chicago called El Jefe, and he'd ordered 6 shots of tequila when I got to the table, and he was already so drunk, and they weren't serving food at that location. So he was like, oh, I know a place. Well, that place that he knew was around the corner kind of, and it was a nightclub. And so we ended up in this nightclub. It just got really out of hand. He was really drunk. I think he was 11 shots in. I did go on several other dates, and a majority of them were very similar to that one, where the guy was just really party mentality and not really in for a relationship or even really getting to know who I was as a person. It was always about, hanky-panky, and that's just not really my scene or what I was after at that time.
Oh yes, we've all heard this. Dating apps, specifically Tinder, create a hookup mentality. And that was true, but there was something else happening simultaneously just below the surface. Online dating had begun a culture of superficiality. In fact, one study cites that 71% of online daters said photos were very important, which seems reasonable, but photos were ranked much, much higher when compared with other values that make someone more compatible, like hobbies and interests, which only ranked at 36%, followed by religion at 25%, politics at 14%, or even type of relationship someone wants at 63%, meaning being attractive was more important than actually wanting a relationship. It could be said that this type of shallowness began driving our dating culture back in 2000 when Hot or Not became an overnight viral hit by letting people upload pictures of themselves so total strangers could rate their attractiveness on a scale of 1 to 10. 20 years later, Hot or Not's DNA is embedded into almost every major platform that defines how we interact online today. French journalist Judith Duportail was on Tinder looking for love when one day she read an article about how Tinder users have a desirability score to rate their attractiveness and match them with people on a similar level. If someone very attractive likes you, you gain points. If someone not very attractive rejects you, you lose points. As Judith puts it, everything unique about you, the sound of your voice, your humor, the fact that you have dogs, that doesn't matter anymore. Judith was furious and wanted to find out what her score was, so she called Tinder. Tinder told her it was their intellectual property and she could never get her score, but she did find out something else. After 6 months of emails and calls, they offered all of the personal data they had on file for Judith, and it was over 800 pages. The files had all of Judith's personal details, age, and education, but also all of her Tinder swipes and personal conversations, along with all of her Facebook likes and her Instagram posts. Basically, all of your apps are talking about you behind your back all of the time. But guess what? Judith still caught herself deleting the app out of anger, but then re-downloading it when she felt lonely. This is called the privacy paradox. We all say we value privacy, but everything we do online seems to contradict that. However, for those that insisted on clenching onto their privacy, there was another option. Again, I called on Leslie.
I mean, I'm picturing a little kid someday soon. Mommy, what's privacy? I mean, it's non-existent. This conversation is probably in a tube under the ocean heading to Antarctica right now. It's not existent. Yeah, I don't care if you think your online dating site is private. It's not. That information is going somewhere. I mean, with a matchmaker, you don't have to worry about it. It's secure. But yeah, online dating, digital stuff, it's another story.
Privacy wasn't the only issue. Do you remember in the last episode when I said the FTC reported that people lost $33 million to romance scams in 2015? Well, that number rose to $201 million in 2019.
I do see online dating companies struggling right now to make themselves be better platforms, safer. I mean, it's just been so irresponsible. I just can't believe that so many fake profiles are allowed to go on to these companies and stay there and extort millions and millions of dollars, out of innocent love seekers.
So, with all of the pitfalls that come along with online dating, what are the alternatives?
If you're serious about looking for a partner, I would rather go to a matchmaking company because then you at least know that you are meeting someone with the same expectations as you. Because at the end, I mean, it took me a lot of dates, I have to say. I mean, you don't immediately think, I should go to a professional agency, a matchmaking company. You think it will take you too much effort, not only money, but time, which it doesn't. I mean, if you think how many money I spent on dates and on things that I mean, through the years with Tinder and Bumble, if you're serious and you know what you want, you can invest that money wisely, like in a matchmaking company instead of spending energy, because energy is also money, I think.
Though matchmaking is one of the oldest industries in existence, it didn't catch fire like dating apps because it wasn't as easy as clicking a button. It attracted those who were willing to invest time and money into finding a serious partnership and kept out those who weren't. And equally important, matchmaking firms act essentially as law firms, keeping the client's information completely confidential. Bravo's Millionaire Matchmaker, combined with the Netflix show Indian Matchmaker, began to intertwine matchmaking into our daily pop culture, bringing it to the forefront of people's minds and therefore normalizing it. I wanted to talk to someone who had a front row seat to this evolution of professional matchmaking. So once again, I called Leslie Wardman, the founder of Ambiance Matchmaking. Keep in mind, she's been professionally matchmaking since the 1990s. How have you seen matchmaking evolve and become more popular over the last 20 years?
Good question. At first, it just was a shocker. Like if you told somebody that you were a matchmaker, jaws would drop, and then immediately there'd be 1,000 questions to the point where I just start telling people I design emojis or something when I went out because it was just too time consuming. But now, it's slightly intriguing to people, but they've seen it on TV, and a lot of their friends have tried it. So it's definitely become mainstream.
Yeah, let's talk about pop culture. How have some of these shows influenced the industry as far as Bravo's Millionaire Matchmaker and now Netflix, the Indian Matchmaker?
Patty from Millionaire Matchmaker definitely helped set the stage for making it mainstream. I thought it was going to end matchmaking because I just didn't think it was becoming as far as reflection on matchmaking, the reality of it. But, no drama, no TV. So, I totally get that. And Indian Matchmaker, that's pretty much off the press as of this very moment. It's up the numbers big time as far as Indian singles reaching out to us. Indian singles that have migrated from their land in India and come to live in the States, and they are wanting our assistance. Mind you, we had our foot in the Indian singles door before the show came out because we've been matching people from there for quite some time anyway. Matchmaking has been huge forever in India, but they, in their culture, have just had some big problems. I mean, it's no longer mom and dad are able to find you your match, and all the traditional ways that they've gone about it seem to be dissolving and rearranging themselves. We'll see how that plays out over time. But people are reaching out to us, and it's been good. People are feeling happy with us because we are so familiar with the landscape.
And how has online dating affected the matchmaking industry?
Online dating has affected the matchmaking industry positively. Some people go on and, they don't go on. They just barely start to investigate it, and they're like, what? I got to put all my photos and information out there for anybody and everybody to see. I don't think so. A lot of women, think about doing that. They might even try it for a week, and they try going to sleep at night and imagine some guy groveling over their pictures, God knows where or who. So, yeah, the whole thought for a lot of people is very unsettling. And then a lot of people that do go on with an open heart and mind, immediately get bit. Bit by scammers and, the dark side of people trying to extort money out of innocent people just trying to find love. And so that is horrific as it is. They're like, okay, forget this. I'm out of here. And they venture over to matchmaking, a much safer platform. But the time aspect of it, goodness, you could get carpal tunnel syndrome just, swiping or whatever, trying to get through to somebody that you think is, on your level. Yeah, and people don't know. People don't know how to go about what questions to ask. It's just, I feel bad. It's like throwing a baby in the ocean or something because you just don't know what's going on. I talked to a very mature, successful person recently, and their second marriage failed. And I'm like, well, why did you marry her? Well, she was rich and had a rockin' body. And I was like, Okay, you got to apply more, things that are really substantial. For the first time in history, the majority of the population are single. By that, I mean not married.
Remember how we were talking about the paradox of choice? Well, this was driving the vast majority of the American population toward being single. And now, for the first time since 1976, the number of singles outnumber married people. We have so many options that it's easy to find the flaws with each one because in the back of our minds, we know there's a stream of alternatives right in our pocket. But Leslie thinks that could be changing.
So, in Gen Y and X, tradition could be gaining notoriety because, our environment is so unstable right now. Where is there any stability? So give me some stability in my relationship. Give me marriage. I want to know that when I come home at the end of the day, I'm walking to a house where I have stability, and marriage might help contribute to that.
I think that with the whole pandemic, especially, we'll have the most divorces and the most engagements and the most babies out of this pandemic. Because it makes you realize who you're with, right? And I think for some, the insecurity will make them latch on to their partner.
Definitely. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, almost. If you cloak it, just the word of insecurity, it almost makes it seem like a bad thing. But I've seen plenty of great relationships get bred out of, let's not call it insecurity, because to me, that's like the biggest voodoo word when it comes to relationships. Let's call it just unstable. Like things are unstable, wanting stability.
Yeah, I'd say most of my friends from Generation Y, they have varying opinions on marriage and children. But yeah, I'd say commitment is important to them. They are seeking that stability. However, I have noticed about half of my friends are torn on whether to have children or not.
Sure. Well, let me ask you something. Why is it that half of your friends do not want children?
Oh, well, I think the number one reason is because of the state of the world. That's honestly like they just worry not only for themselves, but if they were to have children, what would happen? Mm-hmm. Everything that's going on just with violence and war and climate change.
Yeah, but something, I'm sitting here thinking, and I know it's pretty intense right now for sure, but that mindset has been around since caveman days. Seriously, should I get pregnant? What if a T-Rex comes along, or World War II? I wouldn't be here, I don't know, the certain mindsets. My dad built a bomb shelter, in our house and stuff. So
yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. And I think the second reason would be, again, at least in my social circle, we're rethinking the way we want to design our lives. And that includes asking ourselves, do we really want marriage and children? And that answer varies a lot among my friends. And some just don't see it as a part of the bigger picture, whether they rather focus on their career or they think it's just too much of a financial burden, or they simply have, other life plans. It also may be because we have less influence from our family. I know a lot of my friends don't live near their families anymore and maybe aren't as close with them. And so they don't feel that pressure from them or from society. It's becoming more normalized to not have children and also to not marry. So I think we're more free to do what we want now. Yeah, I think we're the first generation that is starting to make up our minds about everything, not just family, but also about religion and about how we want to live our lives. So much has changed with my generation specifically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The millennials, I've seen people, like all my friends now, they do not side with any sort of religion. They're all spiritual, which is the first time that in your generation that didn't happen.
No, that happened the last 20 years. When people come into my office, I would ask them about religion, and slowly but very surely, we would add on the spiritual, not religious checkbox. And before you knew it, within a 10-year period, 90% of people were making that check. And yes, definitely. One of my biggest regrets in raising my children that I did not accept tickets to front row to see MC Hammer. Instead, we went to church that day.
And what would you say are the major differences between online dating and using a professional matchmaking service?
Online dating is like a parallel universe compared to matchmaking. Matchmaking is like reality. You're talking to real people, and you're getting real information. And I even go as far as to, factor in how well does this person know himself? Because a lot of times I have to read in between the lines of what they're telling me to get the real, information. So everything is real. And then when in the back of my mind, in the corner of my mind, when I picture online dating, I just picture all these like fiber optic tubes and this information and, like almost like a future, movie depicting just, people chatting, just a bunch of chatter and useless chatter, and people getting tired of being chatted up and fake profiles chatting. And it's just like, it's like a weird world, like one you really don't want to be in. And it makes me sad because there are people on there that are really wanting, the truth and, to find somebody. And it's just, if you can weed through that and weed through the fake profiles and weed through the unnecessary chatter and find somebody, my hat is off to you. You deserve an award, or you're lucky.
While dating apps have become pervasive in our culture, they're also very new. While they may have hijacked and altered one of our oldest basic instincts as human beings, it's important to remember we're likely very early in their evolution. Swiping and jumping on and off the merry-go-round may continue to stay relevant for some, but most of us will mature and moderate in response to our natural need for real, genuine connection.
I really like technology. I've always loved technology. And so I can't imagine living without it. But at the same time, I can see why it's so overwhelming. A lot of times we don't get human-to-human contact nearly as much as we should. I wish I could probably take all my information that I have now about dating, and who you choose, and you could go back to the more innocent time.
Now that you have the full picture, let me ask you, is technology a symbol of individual expression and liberation? Or was Lewis Mumford right? Has it sucked away our freedom and destroyed life-enhancing values? I'll let you decide. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on the evolution of modern dating. This podcast was hosted by me, Taylor Wade, and is brought to you by Ambiance Matchmaking, an exclusive matchmaking agency for selective singles. Complete an application by clicking the link in the episode show notes or going to ambiancematchmaking.com/apply. Hit subscribe to get notified when new episodes come out. You can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. It really helps others find our show. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Ambiance Match, and we'll see you next time.